Hello, everyone. Excuse me. There's my cough, so you can totally hear it. How I went whoo, down super hard last week with the flu. I am hoping that you all are healthy and can stay healthy and that you can ride this season of flu and RSV and COVID and every other like common winter cold and cough that there is without getting too sick. It was nasty and I am like crawling my way back out from it. But wonderful to be here. So good to see you all. And by see, I mean like know that you're out there doing the work that you are doing and hopefully we can connect soon. So before I like hit the bed hard last week with the flu, I had a great opportunity to connect with middle school math and science and social studies teachers from one of the districts in Oregon that we're working with. And this great kind of question came up as we were working through. We were talking specifically last week about graph choice and graph types and helping our students make their graphs and what goes into that and how we can support our students with that. And a participant made this great comment of sort of this juxtaposition between reading a graph type and making it yourself. And so we got onto this like great conversation, great discussion of are they the same? Are they different? What goes into each of them? So I figured that could be sort of what I would talk about here today for this week's live stream, which is they are cognitively different. Like no joke, absolutely. Reading something is different than being able to construct it and make it yourself. But here's the other piece to that I think is really important as it relates to how we're engaging with our students and how we're helping them think about working with graphs and making their graphs is that we can read different types of visualizations and data types, data graph types, before we can actually make them ourselves. Like looking at something, identifying what we see in the print that's on the page or the pixels that are on the screen, we can do that before we have enough of an understanding of how the data relate to one another and how they're being represented in that visualization type to make it ourselves. So, yes, reading is different than making cognitively, there are different steps that we need to do in order to read. We need to orient to what is on the page or the screen. We need to find those cues, either the visual cues or the written prose cues, to help us understand what's being represented in that visualization. And that's different than understanding the back end of how it's actually constructed to represent the data. And that how piece is a really important piece for executing it, for making it ourselves. Now, does that make it easy for our students to do these different graph types? Absolutely not. But it does mean that our students can look at a map type. They can look at a chart type or a graph or a plot type before they themselves can actually make it. And that's huge for a couple reasons. One, if there's something in your curriculum that they can't actually make themselves or get Google Sheets to make for them, or using some of those graphing programs that we've talked about for themselves, that's okay. They can still look at that graph type. Absolutely, 100%. If it's showing up in your state test and you haven't taught your students how to make that graph type themselves, that's okay. They can look at it. If they know the critical thinking skills of how to make sense and how to look at a visualization, to unpack it and think about it, they're good. We get to whew, breathe, pause. It's going to be okay. But also, that then means there's like two components of things that we're helping our students work with. It's the like reading of it and it's the making of it. And these can often get sort of intermixed and intermingled in our K to 12 classrooms when we're having our students work with data. And I don't know about you, but I have been hearing for years similar things to what my students struggled with, which is like they're just not getting it when it comes to graphs. And we've heard you loud and clear, and we are working on creating some resources to be able to launch at the beginning of the summer, the beginning of June, and we would love to hear your thoughts and opinions about that, about where are students getting tripped up around graphing? What would help? What have you tried? What hasn't worked? Like what has worked? That would be exciting. What has worked? And the way that I want to do that is that I would love to invite you to book a call with us. It's like totally free. I understand you have so many things going on in your calendar, but in the attempt of us trying to make this as like best serving for you and your colleagues as possible, we have these graphs and graphing course calls this week and next week. They're like a few in there. Jump in, grab a spot. There are a couple actually, a couple of times in February, I believe, as well, that will pop up here. Yep, next Friday. So just in the next 2 weeks, like, do you have time to jump on a call with me and help me get a sense of how things are going for you with your students? So if you do, and I'll put the link for this in the live stream as well, it's just calendly.com/dataspire backslash course hyphen call. Don't worry about all this stuff, the month, all of that. But if you could join in and jump in, and even for 15 minutes would be so super helpful, because this is a thing that we need to help our students get better with. And if you are struggling, know that you're not alone. Others are struggling, and I would love to hear from you about what you're struggling with. If you have figured out some things that are working with your students, I would also love to talk to you to figure out what those are so that we can share that out with your colleagues so that more students can get comfortable and confident in working with their graph types. So that is my plea. That is my request. I would love to talk to you. And through all of my cough, it's through the screen, so I can't get you sick. Would love to hear what are your frustrations, what are working, the good, the bad, the ugly of making graphs with your students. And just remember, reading is different than making with our graph types. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful week that is healthy and that is warm for those of you in cold places this week. And I look forward to talking to you soon.